This isn't about trying to price fix. It's just making sure that the economy is operating the way it should, that this is really supply and demand, which we all respect. It's just making sure that coming out of the pandemic or in difficult times that people aren't increasing the price of food just to make a bigger profit. All it is making sure that capitalism stays within the guardrails, and it's not new. We've been doing this in the States for a long time.
Kevin O'Leary joins me now. I got a feeling, Kevin, that you really don't agree with that, do you?
No, I don't. And I have to look at it through the lens of an investor. I have to invest regardless of who's in the White House. So I really perk my ears up, Stuart, when I hear policy, as I did at a rally this weekend. I've spoken with dozens of investors, and we're quite shocked. Just from the 30,000 feet, we thought Harris was going to reboot her whole position to the middle. The idea was to get the swing voters on board with her with a middle strategy. Instead, we're getting Bidenomics 2.0, which is a shock. In addition to Bidenomics 2.0, if you look through the rally proposals, it's basically the same stuff they've been touting for the last 36 months. You've got this price control, price fixing patina on top of it, which we know doesn't work. If you go back to the 70s when we tried this in the U.S., it was a disaster. Look at Venezuela today, or North Korea, or the old USSR tried this. It leads to black markets. It leads to a complete loss of freedom of goods and the breakdown of distribution. I mean, this is a really, really bad idea. And I'm so shocked that she's doing it. We're all shocked. We can't believe this is the platform. We're almost stunned, because this leads to a position of just saying, well, you're getting the same thing you had. And Bidenomics as a brand is toxic waste to the swing voter. It's associated with inflation. All of these ideas are very inflationary.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about my favorite topic, which is the economy, because we just got a bombshell report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Biden administration, where they are admitting that, hey, we kind of fudged our government numbers, right? Those jobs reports that the mainstream liberal media were fawning over as proof and evidence that this economy is so great, despite the fact that you have normal everyday people saying, no, this economy is terrible, mainly due to inflation. But you also have other statistics as well, too, to back this up. Like, for example, the savings rate is at a historical low. It's around like 3% or something like that. When interest rates are elevated, which, again, shows you that people really don't have money to save, even when they get a higher yield on their savings. Also, on top of that, consumer debt is basically the highest that it's ever been, which is an indication that people are spending more money in order to survive. They're taking out debt to survive because real wages haven't kept up with inflation. Okay, these are solid, factual statistics that back up the idea that the economy is not doing well for the average person. But the mainstream liberal media, people like Don Lemon and others, say, no. The average American is not doing bad, okay? Everybody's doing great, okay? Bidenomics is amazing. And their only real piece of evidence to support this claim is these magical job numbers that made absolutely no sense, okay, outside of the context that the government is responsible for a vast majority of the job growth, in the sense that these jobs are actually government jobs. At least a third of the jobs are government jobs. And then you have healthcare jobs, which are subsidized by the government, and hospitality jobs, which are lower quality and probably filled with illegal immigrants. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about government jobs created and jobs for illegals, then yeah, the government's done a great job, okay? They've created a lot of jobs, but it turns out that they haven't created as many jobs as they said that they created, because they're saying that, no, about 1 million jobs, almost 1 million jobs, those weren't actually created, right? Like, that didn't actually happen. Oops, whoopsie, my bad, okay? That is a problem, okay? And when Democrats are confronted with the reality that, hey, you know, even the Biden administration is admitting that these jobs reports were fake, that they said that more jobs were created than the jobs that were actually created. They go into full reality denial mode, saying things that are the exact opposite of what everybody else is saying about Kamala's economic policy and the track record of the Biden administration.
Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. So happy to have you here with us. And joining us right now is former Rhode Island Democratic Governor Gina Raimondo. We should also note she has a position in the Biden administration, but she's not here in that official capacity today. Since we're going to be talking politics, we're going to be talking about the DNC. So I am so glad that you were able to join us in the capacity that you are.
President Biden, Kamala Harris have a great track record on the economy. They inherited a economic crisis, and it is now
RNBC
strong.
reporting pushes back a little bit on what the Biden-Harris administration inherited. It says that really that some of the job growth and stuff like that had really started rebounding post-pandemic, even as they came into office. But there was some growth in the manufacturing sector for sure. I am curious as to your thoughts on today, the Bureau of Labor saying that more than 800,000 fewer jobs were actually created than initially reported. And we have a soundbite here just to play. We can listen to it together because Donald Trump is already addressing this on the campaign trail. So let's take a listen to that one together.
The administration padded the numbers with an extra, listen to this one, 818,000 jobs that don't exist. So they said they existed, and they never did exist. They built them up so that they could say what a wonderful job they're doing.
So when you hear that, do you potentially think that this new numbers could be a liability for this campaign?
No, when I hear that, first of all, I don't believe it because I've never heard Donald Trump say anything truthful.
It is, though, from the Bureau of Labor.
I'm not familiar with that. But look, let me just say this. I have talked to hundreds of business leaders who have looked at Harris's plans, who have looked at her focus on innovation, her focus on, helping businesses, her focus on, she has said over and over, I am pro-business. So I think the optimism is real. And, she is so focused on bringing down costs. That's what the American people still need help with. Housing costs, child costs, food costs. Mm-hmm. And she hears that and she's addressing that with her policies. And so far, I think she's getting good marks for that.
Wow. Wow. Full-blown reality denialism, okay? This woman literally said, well, I don't believe Trump citing these statistics because I don't believe anything he says, right? And then the anchor has to correct her and say, well, no. Trump's actually citing something that is from the Biden administration, right? The same administration that you work for, okay? Yeah, they're saying this, okay? Now, I believe that this woman is Biden's Commerce Secretary, which makes this clip even crazier because she seems to be out of touch with the reality of the economy. And you should be aware of the Bureau of Labor statistics, right? You should be familiar with the numbers and the reports that are coming out. Now, she may not have been familiar with that report, but at the same time, for her to just dismiss it off the cuff, I think just really shows you a lot about her, right, as a person and how Trump deranged that she actually is, okay? Because I tell you guys, a side effect of Trump derangement seems to be cognitive impairment, okay? We see it all the time with these Trump deranged individuals, right? They don't seem to have the ability to think properly, right, or logically or rationally about anything. To me, it seems like the more that we hear these individuals that work for the Biden administration, specifically when it comes to economic policy, the more that we hear them talk, right, the more it makes sense for why we're currently in the economic disaster that we're in. We have fools running the government, okay, setting policy. So with that being said, we got to talk more about this jobs report, right? Essentially 800,000 jobs vanishing. Okay, oops, guys, those jobs weren't actually created. Okay, so while the mainstream liberal media was celebrating the success of Bidenomics, okay, touting all these jobs that Biden created, these fake jobs, right, that really did actually turn out to be fake. Yeah, it seems as if, in my opinion, I believe that this is coming out now because of more nefarious reasons. Okay, and I'm going to explain to you guys my hypothesis here. But first, I want to go ahead and play this video from Fox Business so that you guys can learn a little bit more about this jobs report.
Let's unpack how big government spending impacts affordability in America. So the Labor Department data has now shown massive price increases since the year 2000 in several sectors with a high level of government involvement. Yes, that's right. Since 2000, hospital services, guess how much they're up? 252.5%. College tuition up almost 173%. Housing up 103%. When they put their paws in, it doesn't work out. In addition, the Biden-Harris administration has added over $1 trillion and 312 million hours of paperwork in regulatory activity so far. This is according to the American Action Forum. Let's bring in Art Laffer, former Reagan economic advisor and Laffer Associates chairman. Art, it is always great to have you. Your group committee
It's nice to be here.
Okay, your group is obviously the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, reporting that the Biden-Harris regulations have actually costed the average American family nearly $50,000. So we're watching the DNC this week. We're not hearing specifics about the policy, but people are wondering if we have to suffer for some reason through 8 more years of this, what would that do to the middle class? Because I think it would just crush it.
Well, I think you're correct. It will crush it. I mean, it's clear that the Biden-Harris administration has been very, very focused on increasing regulations, restrictions, requirements, of mandates, all of that stuff. And all of that adds a great deal to the expenses of a middle-class family or a lower-class family or an upper-class family. It hits all Americans across the board, and it does nothing but damage as far as the costs go. And the benefits, as you know, often are to take away things, not add things to the economy. So it's a net loser, and that study shows that it really is a net loser and is hurting the economy a lot.
Art, we got this big downward revisions to jobs today, almost 1 million jobs. And I know that means on one hand that the economy is probably not quite as strong as some people have said it is. But to me, the bigger issue is the lack of trust that people have in the data that they're getting. And this number only adds fuel to that fire. How big of an issue is that, Art?
You know, I'm not involved in the collection and the analysis of those numbers like I once was. I was once chief economist at the Office of Management and Budget when it was formed in 1970, and I really got to know those numbers, Brian, really, really, really well back then. I would be shocked if the processes that are developing those numbers were changed and that there was any reason not to trust those numbers any more today than back then. Those numbers are result from surveys, et cetera, and in the revisions, they get all the final stuff in, they put it all together, and then they do a revision. I really personally I don't lose trust in those numbers. I hope other people don't either. I can't imagine them being used politically.
I can't tell if this guy is joking, right, or being sarcastic, but I definitely think that there's a lot of politics going on here, right? And I'm going to explain to you guys exactly what I mean. Again, this just so happens to come before the mid-September Fed meeting, in which it is highly speculated that they're going to cut rates. Now, why does it matter that the jobs reports have been revised to show that the economy is not as strong as the Biden administration was claiming? Again, their main evidence for a strong economy was these job reports, okay? Well, the reason why is because that incentivizes the Fed to cut rates, which is something that would, in theory, maybe boost the economy before the election, depending on what the Feds decide to do, right? So if the Feds cut rates, then they're going to be increasing the money supply, so to speak. Money becomes cheaper to borrow. You're going to be infusing more capital into the economy because you're seeing signs that the economy is slowing down. So you want to lower the cost of borrowing money so that businesses can expand, right? This is the basic economic theory behind it. So personally, for Democrats, right, it would be beneficial for Feds to cut rates in September, right, before going into the election, okay, because we know that that is the main driver of people's votes, at least people who are thinking rationally, right? Unfortunately, we have a significant amount of people in this country who don't think rationally when it comes to how they vote, but the rational people think about the economy, okay? So a Fed rate cut in September, right before the election, could juice the economy, okay? Depends on how much they decide to cut rates. But there's a significant risk that you could also reignite inflation, okay? Which is also part of the reason why Kamala Harris's plan, her economic plan, makes absolutely zero sense, proposing $1.7 trillion in spending, while at the same time it is likely that the Feds are going to start to cut rates, okay? And that to me is a recipe for disaster, right? That seems to be very inflationary. The last thing that you should be doing is to increase spending as the Feds cut rates, okay? If the Feds are going to cut rates, you probably should not increase spending. You probably should, at the very least, try to look to decrease some spending in ways that you can, right? In my opinion, that is what will make sense. But politicians don't make decisions that make sense. They make decisions that they think are going to get them votes. And unfortunately, because a significant portion of this country is economically illiterate, they don't really understand how this stuff works, right? They hear about, oh, well, the government's going to give me $25,000 to buy a house. And they think that that is something that is good, right? That is positive. But all of these things cost money, right? And ultimately, the consumers end up paying either via higher taxes or inflation, right? That's typically what happens. So I think that this revision of the jobs report, I don't believe some of these numbers, right? I don't think that this number is any more reliable than the last number, but I think that it's happening because it's going to incentivize the Feds to cut rates going into the election, which is going to help out Democrats, the incumbents, the people that are currently in power, Kamala Harris, is going to help them out, right? And that is, I think, what's going on here, in my opinion.
So, Art, we just got to hear, your thoughts, your studies on the impact of the Democrats' economic policy on the American consumer, the American household. So I just want to highlight a Kamala Harris economic policy proposal on the corporate tax rate to hike it from 21% to 28%. What do you say about how that's going to impact the American worker and the American economy?
Yeah, well, let me just say there are two parts to it. Number one is there's a part that just automatically goes away, sunsets at the end of 2025. That does not include the corporate rate. They need to do that by separate legislation to be able to raise that rate up to 28%. But if they did that, why would they do that? I mean, in fact, what we know is that by dropping that rate to 21%, the budget revenues came in larger. Not only larger than expected, came in larger than they had the year before with a higher rate. Not only that, the poverty in the United States at an all-time low, especially amongst minorities, the poor, the disadvantaged. And if you look at the growth rate of the U.S., the growth rate in that 2-year period when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act bill passed, we were growing right along with Europe prior to that, and then right after that, we started growing faster than Europe. At the end, our GDP was 2.5 percentage points higher than it would have been had we stayed growing at the European rate. All of these are enormous positive benefits. Why would you want to throw those benefits away and make Americans worse off? But that's Kamala. She needs an economic advisor badly, 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 and she doesn't have one that's telling her what really happens. And that's very sad and very scary.
Art,
I mean, she's surrounded by idiots, right? I think that is very apparent at this point that the people that are advising her don't really know much. Okay, all they know is spend more money, right? That's the only solution that Democrats have. When, again, if your main thing is that, well, this is a supply problem, right? Then why don't you craft economic policies that help promote an increase in the supply of goods and services, right? Which would be to cut taxes, cut regulation, and we sorely need to cut spending as well too, right? We need to do all that stuff. But again, that's the exact opposite of what Kamala Harris is trying to do, right? She's trying to do the exact opposite of what should be done, okay? She's trying to implement price controls. She's trying to tax unrealized capital gains. She's trying to tax corporations more. That's what she's trying to do. And again, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for all that, right? The American people will end up paying for it in the cost of jobs, economic growth, economic opportunities, inflation, right? With all the money that she wants to spend, okay, $1.7 trillion. Her plan will be a disaster for this country. And that's why the smart people, right, the intelligent people are speaking out loudly about this. I mean, even the mainstream media has turned on her when it comes to economic policy, right? All of the outlets that want to remain some sort of credibility when it comes to the economy, okay, in this subject, yeah, they've said, nah, we can't get on board with this communism, right? This is crazy, okay? You go full Soviet. So, yeah, the jobs report, all those magical jobs that Biden was creating, right? A lot of them disappeared. I still don't really believe the number. I think it was much worse than what they're admitting. But yeah, I think they're doing this in order to incentivize the feds to cut rates before the election. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.